Hanji, welcome to another episode of the Not in the Clouds podcast. I wanted everyone on the podcast. Juan's busy and he's out at the moment, but I thought let's get this out before sort of the whole world does their Paryog. And the key sort of conversation I think that we need to be having is, what does Paryog mean?
I remember when I was a kid, right? Paryog was like an exciting time because it meant that when you go to the Gurdwara, and this is like we used to have programs in the evenings at the time, not in the mornings.
Yeah.
Things have obviously changed since then, but what it meant was everybody would get together at the Gurdwara. You'd be doing Netanim, and then the whole point of Paryog as a kid was, you're going to get pizza, burger, like all of the sort, like the food and that you wouldn't normally get in Langar. Like normal dal prasad is amazing, but you'd get like shahi paneer and like all those things. So as a kid, it was always like, I'm looking forward to Paryog, and you don't really feel like you're missing out on anything because you would get that through Langar. So I understand what you're saying about now it may, some people, if you haven't experienced that as a lifestyle of not eating from outside or not having that option available to do at home, right? Then it might feel like a challenge.
As much as we are, food lovers, I guess we need to actually dig into what Jap Paryog means. If you go to Barama, I think Barama, the Gurbani talks about the month of Asu, and it says Asun Prem Mahara Kyo Miliye Had Jai. And essentially, it talks about, I'll look at the English meaning for that. It says, in the month of Asu, my love for the Lord overwhelms me. How can I go and meet the Lord? Now, if we're going by Gurbani, the Paryog usually ends with the Asuda Mela, meaning the month of Asu's Mela. And if we're talking about the love for the Guru, how can we, this goes back to what I was saying about Jap Paryog and what the Paryog means. Essentially, the Paryog means it has to have some connection with love, right? Especially if we're talking about the context of this month of Asu. So I think Sadhguru Pratap Singh Ji's Updesh and what they were talking about when they went to go and do this Paryog, it was essentially to delve into the depth of love for this month. And I think that's what I think the focus needs to be on, not how I need to stop eating from outside or I need to, control myself. That is in itself a huge thing. There's no doubt that, I've noticed it as well. Like, when we've made food at home, prepared by ourselves, it's easier to sort of wake up in the morning, and it's easier to, the energies around that is, just experimenting ourselves, using the word experiment, because Paryog, I would translate that to experiment. It does make a difference. However, I think the focus of Paryog needs to be love.
Oh, 100%. I think naturally, whenever you talk about anything in Sikh philosophy, I think it always comes down to love. Let's take Guru Nanak Dev Ji, "Jo to prem khelan ka chaho." Again, prem. Yeah. If you want to play this game of love with me, if we look at Guru Gobind Singh Ji, when they're setting out the Rahat Maryada, "Jaki rahat na janiye gur mantar nahi cheet, unka bhojan kha ke visre har syo preet." This central concept of love is so important for a Sikh, because ultimately that's your relationship, isn't it, with your Guru or your or a Gal Purakh. And the third one that's just come to mind is from, again, Guru Gobind Singh Ji. And it's probably the one line that's used to kind of summarize what Jap Paryog is all about. Ala pahar salap sinindra dea chimatan preet. Ala pahar, so eating less, salap sinindra, sleeping less, dea chimatan preet, and increasing your compassion, forgiveness, and love, right? In everything that you do, in the way that you conduct yourself, in the way that you talk to people, in the way that you present yourself in society, how can you become more compassionate, more forgiving, and more loving? So I think that really encapsulates the goal of Paryog.
Focusing on those aspects, I think what I'm doing now I will reap the actions later on. You know how we say, you reap the actions of what you sow. Now, imagine I come, and I've seen this in this last week, which is really funny. If I've come down hard on someone and I've really sort of gotten angry or something, I'd see something happen. I mean, we can call it karma or karma, as we say in the West. Like, I can see it happening to me like, not if it's not in the next couple of days, it's in a week, maybe 2 weeks or whatever. But I think it's how you act around people, whether you give the love when you talk, when you whether you're listening and receiving. I feel that is key.
A big part of Paryog, and which is probably the reason why we're having this conversation, is the aspect of keeping Sodh. I think that's what we're talking about. There's a great documentary on YouTube by Kartar Singh Pogal, who covered the Cant. So if you haven't seen that, for kind of like an introduction as to what Sodh Maryada is. But I think the closest comparison I can think of is Bibek, where the expectation is you eat from known sources, people who have taken Naam as a bare minimum, who keep a certain rahat maryada. It's like going into any restaurant and knowing what the food hygiene rating is. It's like 5, right? This Sodh brings it to a 15, I think.
Yeah.
So you know how it's prepped, who it's prepped by, and what kind of energy has gone into making that food. So that's a big part of Paryog. And I think it's primarily about, if we think back to secondary school, maybe even A level, if you did chemistry or any science or physics, I remember sitting down and the teacher saying, these are the variables in this experiment that you can control, like the amount of water you put in, the amount of heat that you put in, and these are all the external factors that are in your control. So if we apply that to Paryog and Sodh, things that are going into my body, either through the food that I eat or the things that I watch or the things that I hear.
What you're talking about in terms of the Sodh Maryada thing, I akin that, and again, I don't follow it, but I akin it to, I put it to essentially being in an army, right? So everyone knows that if you're in an army, you're very regimented. So you've got a time where you wake up in the morning, you've got a time to train in the morning, you have to have a certain fitness level, you have to eat right in order for your body to perform right. I also think that, when we take Amrit at the beginning of a Paryog, Amrit for me is essentially enrolling in that Fauj, in that, Guru Ki Fauj, as we say, Guru Gobind Singh Ji's army. And essentially, you're committing your vows. You're sort of, we're putting this all in English terms here, but in Punjabi and sort of in that sort of way of thinking, if you were in an army, and I'm not saying that you're under attack, but there was outside external forces trying to get in or infiltrate, you wouldn't eat from them, right? You wouldn't. It just wouldn't happen. You wouldn't talk to them or converse with them too much or you wouldn't give too much information away when you do, right? But I think Sodh gives that level of regiment, that level of control in one's life.
It's something there as a tool to be used to get to that point, isn't it? Because we've heard so many stories of like Sodhis being the most abrasive people to come across, or being very kind of, this is how it is, or you're not doing it, sort of thing. There's a Sakhi during Sadhguru Ram Singh Ji's time where Sodhi Singh has just done a shnan, using spring water, and somebody's come up to him and said, "Can I have some water to drink?" And he refuses to give them a drink because he thinks, if I give this person a drink, then and the reason why I think you have to think back to Kui, they're getting water out of a well, and then you've got this little dorlu or gadwa that you'd be pouring water to. So there's no glass involved. So chitta peh bhi sakda. So he's thinking, chitta peh jayega, main khulla ho jayega, I'm already late for the divan, I'm going to have to do another ishan. So he says no. But like we started, this whole concept of Sodh is about love. And if you can't feel love in that moment and think, koi pyasa aaya, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ ਹੈ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਮਾਲਿਕ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਜਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾਲਿਕ ਨੂੰ ਛਕਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰਭੂ ਨੂੰ ਛਕਾ ਰਿਹਾ, then if you don't have that experience or don't have that, even as a starting step of like, this is what I should be aiming for, if you become a Sodhi and your expectation is that wherever I go, I'm going to order people to get me, pure orange juice, or I'm going to expect a certain level of like dietary fulfillment. If you make Sodh a burden on somebody else, I don't think you're doing Sodh properly.
So in the West, how would you? So what steps do you take in your everyday life? Because I know you've got the infrastructure around you, right? So your family around you keeps Sodh, so it's easy for you to do that within yourselves. Outside of that, like when you go to work perhaps, or when you're I don't know, when you meet friends, or whether you've got colleagues that you meet or something like that, how do you interact, and what do you see yourself do differently, especially in this month, or not?
Generally, I don't think there's any difference in how
Okay.
I would like interaction wise. You're still the same person. The way that
Yeah.
you talk to people, the way that you carry yourself, there's no change in that. But
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about is the subtle differences of how you would maybe take your food with you. I think the food is, again, I think we're going to come back to it, but food is probably the biggest thing that puts people off becoming a Sodhi.
Yeah.
And actually, on a side note, if you are a Amritarish Singh, you can actually phone up Mr. Singh's and say, "Can I have my pizza prepared by an Amritari?" I didn't know you could do this, but you can do this.
Is that an option on Deliveroo?
I don't know, maybe, but yeah, there's an Amritari that can prepare your food. But anyway, so taking food to work, you could take it in any kind of panda. I know, like with babek, you'd have to have it in a sarablo kind of container. But even then, I was listening to a katha, and they were like, you could have a sarablo bata, cover it in kapra, and then put it in a dabba. That's an option. You can, and we saw that it's even simpler. You could have wooden cutlery that you could take with you to eat food. And the only thing to be aware of, and some people have a habit of eating with their mouth open. So the only thing you have to be aware of is when you're eating in front of somebody, they're not spitting in your food.
But sometimes for certain people, for certain, personality types, it's hard to change. So do we just change that for a month, and then all of a sudden after this we go back to, eating with John and Susan?
I see what you're saying. So I think the ask is, if you've never kept Sodh in your entire life, change one thing about your lifestyle. Adopt one thing. If you've never had spring water, like from a natural source, just instead of, and you've only ever had tap water for this 1 month, say to yourself, I'm not going to drink tap water, I'll have bottled spring water. And that's one change that you could make for the month, that I'm only going to have spring water. But then what you're doing is, by not having tap water, then you're conscious that, how am I cooking my food? Because am I using spring water, or am I using tap water?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay. That's another change then.
Yeah.
So that one small change has such a profound effect on your whole lifestyle that you'll realize you've changed so much just by one choice.
It's important. I know we've mentioned it before on the podcast, Amritwela Satchanaw, Vadiai Vichar, and all of these things are great. But in a day-to-day life, realistically, not everyone does that, right? In Paryog, why is it important to wake up before sunrise?
Yeah, I remember going during secondary school it was a real fashion trend to have these massive headphones. You rock up into school and you're listening to, and that was a persona, right? That you were carrying. And this was an experience that I was so profoundly taken aback by, that in the morning, and this isn't even waking up early in the morning, but just walking to school. If I'm listening to Kullaji or Balwant Paji or any Shabad Kirtan, then I'm set up in a different frame of mind for that entire day. And instead, if I'm listening to Snoop Dogg or Eminem or whoever else, then you've got something else going on in your mind.
Yeah.
So I think that Amrit Vedalism is key, because it's a time of no distraction. And the biggest distraction now, anyway, is your phone. So 3-4 o'clock, there's not many people awake anyway, unless you're in a group, the Gyara Lakh part, and then you still got people pinging in. It's amazing. People at 2-3 o'clock in the morning doing Gurbani part. It's very inspiring. So there's no distraction. I think that's the key, isn't it?
I think the other thing is that Sadhguruji has said to you, try and do your first hour or do
Silent.
some time silently, meaning have nothing playing in the background, because usually we'd have Updesh or you'd have some form of Asadivad or something. How does that affect your experience in the morning?
You're forced then, because if you're sitting at the Gurdwara, you've got no way to. It's quite embarrassing if you want to stretch your legs, or you've got to like fiddle around. So you're forced to be in a position where potentially you can't lean on anything, either on like the wall or anything. So you're sitting there cross-legged, back straight, and you're forced to be in a situation to confront yourself. I think the scariest thing to do is to look introspectively at what your mind is doing.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure you've been through this experience, and you sit there with your thoughts and you think, I've got some crazy thoughts going on in my head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to be confronted with that reality, that all these things are going on in my head, and you're sitting there in silence, and you're forced to confront these thoughts, and you think, I'm not this person, am I?
Yeah.
And a brilliant, kind of technique is like you're observing traffic on the road, is to observe your thoughts like that, and just don't become attached to a thought. Just let it pass.
Yeah.
And that silent meditation in the morning, I think that's what it's about. It's about
Interesting.
quietening your mind to a degree where you can then focus on Naam Simran. Because going straight into Naam, there's a whole process of going through, like a sword doesn't become a sword. A sword has to go through this process of being tempered before it becomes a sword. And it's the same with the mind, that you have to go through this process of being introspective, being silent with your thoughts, allowing your thoughts to flow, and then being thoughtless.
Anything that you do or touch or remember, with that touch, you remember God, essentially. And that it changes things, because we've already got all these visual like sort of memory pieces. Like when you look at your right hand, you see your kada. When you look in the mirror, you see if you look without sort of focusing, you see a dastar and kiss, right? And that kind of those images of say maybe gurus or maybe sants or someone that you look up to almost come back to you.
This entire conversation that we're having is essentially what Paryog is, isn't it? That it's about understanding how can I change up my Naam Simran to make my mind more still and to enjoy it. That's what we're trying to do, is enjoy doing Naam Simran. Because and it's the analogy and sorry to elaborate on what you were saying there, things that you're touching and then using that as an excuse, like if you open a door saying Dhan Sat Guru Nanak Dev Ji, changing a gear in your car saying Dhan Sat Guru Gobind Singh Ji, what that's doing is, one, connecting you back to that history and that heritage. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji did all these things in their Udasiya. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, Char Sahibzade var dite, pura parvar var dita. And it connects you back to that whole history, and that emotion that just comes up again and again. So that's the Simran part of Naam. You've got Naam, which is obviously Vaheguru, and then Simran, all of these things, that heritage. But Paryog is ultimately about this reflection. How do I get my mind to enjoy this process? And the analogy that I always go back to, and it's so, I feel relatable, maybe somebody else can give me a better analogy, is if I asked you the question instead of how long, if you could only eat one food and that one food was pizza, how long do you think you could eat pizza for?
About 2 days.
2 days. I know you'd be tired of it after 48 hours.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do with our mind. We're trying to force this mind, which doesn't want to stay still. It's like a kid. And you're trying to force this mind to repeat the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Who's the idiot then? If you know something isn't working, change it up. Like when we listen to Raggis, why is listening to Balwant Baji or Kullaji, why is listening to them so interesting? Because of all the flavor that they put into it, the emotion, the pace, the idea that they come up with. It's every time you listen to it, it's something different. Why can't we do that with Naam Simran?
The food thing aside, the food is still
It's still important.
it is very important. It's also going to be controversial because, you get there's an element of judginess as well, where
Yeah, definitely.
that person's eating from outside, or
Well,
that person's had
yeah.
Starbucks today.
That judgment never stops as well, because regardless of whether you keep choti sodh or vadi sodh, they're like, oh, vadi sodh nahi rakhi, but you just told choti sodh. But I feel like if people are saying that to you, ignore them, because the takeaway is do as much as you can.
You can't get a takeaway, but
you got to do as much as you can, right?
Yeah.
Because even just by that one, like we said, if you just stop drinking tap water, you've completely changed your kitchen setup.
A friend of mine went to a Catholic school, and as an Indian, they would observe Lent, and they would observe Lent by just giving up one thing, for example, chocolate, or something like that. And I think, as much as I said at the beginning of this podcast that it's always about the things that you can't do rather than the things that you can do. And I think you turned it on its head, and you said that you can do everything. However, you need to stay in sort of your limitations. But knowing your limitations and why you're putting those limitations on are important. In a world where we're constantly surrounded by choice, surrounded by options, whether you want Android or iPhone, or you can order a pizza or a burger or whatever you want. You're surrounded by options. But if you limit yourself, you will find that you'll be content and you'll be able to make a decision quicker anyway.
I have a challenge for you, Sodh. So forget all this, like,
I'm
saying this. No. I'm going to come across as controversial. I'll start saying don't keep sword. So if you don't want to keep sword, right, one challenge for everyone, and I think you can do this on Android as well, I'm pretty sure you can, is to go into your settings for this 1 month. Yeah. Hang on, before I go into all this, what's your screen time been?
It's about 4 hours a day, which is a lot.
But it's still pretty good. I mean,
it's still a lot.
Still pretty good. So I started noticing, right, that because at night before going to bed, it's just out of habit, you would pick up your phone, go through social media, scroll through, and then you go to sleep, And I noticed that waking up in the morning, my eyes would be like stinging. And I thought, something's not right, because maybe it's the screen time before bed, That's the obvious thing. So I was doing some research, and I came across this thing which said, start treating your phone like a tool, right, and not an entertainment device, right? And the easiest way to do that is to take out the entertainment. And what I've done for this Paryog is changed my phone to black and white.
Yeah.
So have you done it as well?
Yeah. Well, I got a shortcut for it, but yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. So I don't have the shortcut, but the only thing I miss at the moment is not seeing pictures in color. But everything else is black and white, and I've stuck to it, everything so far. And I genuinely, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've had the same experience. If I look at my wife's phone, the icons are so saturated.
Yeah.
And I read somebody else who was doing it, and he said, the world is so much more vivid now that my phone is black and white. So if you, for this 1 month of Paryog, change your phone to black and white.
The other thing that I've done recently with my phone is I found it was too easy to order stuff. And you know what I'm like. Like, I'm a
Amazon.
gear hog, right?
Yeah,
as soon as I find something new or something cool, I'll be like, Amazon, quick. It'll be here next day. I've deleted Amazon as an app. I've deleted anything that I can, apart from Temu now, I think, but I've deleted anything that I can just buy without having. Remember, I don't know if you were like this, right? But I don't know. We're a little bit the same generation, but we're a little bit not. But do you have purchases that are laptop purchases, meaning you can only go on the laptop to buy it? Like for me, a flight is a laptop purchase.
Yes. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
But now that I've turned my phone black and white, I'm forced to, if I want to watch something, I'll watch it on YouTube, I'll watch it on my laptop.
Oh,
so it's things like email. Smart. Email is a laptop thing as well.
Yeah, me too.
So so this is Paryog, isn't it? So this is the experiment. Try something different.
If you just think about it, right? If you eat less, your body's taking less time to process it. So it reduces, I feel, I mean, personally, on a life level, I feel that if you do eat less, which again during the Paryog I'm trying to, that you have more energy to do a lot more during the day. And it sounds kind of counterintuitive because, food is energy, but it doesn't work like that necessarily. And then also, you can actually sleep less, meaning it's weird. Saying this out loud doesn't make sense, but in my head, it completely makes sense because I feel that if you're sleeping less, you should be energized in the morning to do things like, I don't know, go for a walk because you're waking up earlier after you've done your Nam Simran, right? Or,
What's that adage about early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise?
yeah,
That's
wealthy.
yeah, healthy.
Really?
What's the one that you've heard?
I think it's just healthy and wise, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Focusing on something, when you've got a goal at the end of the
An
month.
intention. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and an intention. Yeah, exactly. That's the right word. I feel that you will work towards that intention differently.
100%.
So your food won't matter. Nothing else will matter. It will just be, for example, I've got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, right? Even if you have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, that's what you're going to go to bed thinking. You'll get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Whereas if you don't have the intention, I'll get up at 6:30. It's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still doing Nam Simran. You know what I mean? But
Nice.
I thought, yeah, let's make this a short episode and talk about the Paryog as we're starting it, and maybe we can have a catch up towards the end of the Paryog or even after the Mela, just to see what lessons learnt this year.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Thank you for your time, Arthur.
Thank you, Sarab.